Hello, what is up, gamers? Today I'm going to be doing a little overview of my units that I used for this season. I believe it was the Oath season is what it's called. I'll double check before posting. Anyways, yep, I'll be showing you what helped me get into Emperor and secure it. And I'll try to go over like the team comps I used and such as well. We'll just go in order. First up, we have Ed. I currently have him on the Nuker build. This way, so he can't heal. I used to use Lifesteal Ed, and it was pretty nice, but with how aggressive the meta was, Lifesteal Ed just wasn't doing anything because he wouldn't do enough damage and he wouldn't heal enough either. So this build here is crit damage torrent. The purpose of it is you draft him into anti-cleave, so if Rand does do his S3, full nuke, everything squishy on his team is instantly dead. I have him on Lethe's artifact because it increases max HP, which he still scales on damage from HP, but he also scales from attack, which is why I have 2.8. And then you get increased damage on an extra attack, which is his S2. So this is bulky enough to survive a couple hits, and also does enough damage to just one-shot a cleave team. Next up we have Hwayoung. Really you want to get her as close as possible to 5k attack before the artifact, but it's kind of hard to do that. So I have her on Spirit of Purification just because, like, even at plus 24, 18% attack is a lot just for free. And on her, that really helps a lot. You really just want to stack as much attack as you can. 220 speed would probably be the minimum. You want to have a little bit of bulk, but ideally if you can get her like 230 with 5k attack, that's like premium. I am missing imprints and artifact, so is what it is. Jacko, pretty much your standard Jacko build. I didn't use her much because I wasn't really cleaving that much. But yeah, 4.1, you pretty much just want 4k 300 as her baseline with 220 speed to make sure you always cut. You can go with her own artifact or Portrait of the Saviors. Kind of just depends on which one's better leveled, I guess. Like her own for me is I think only like, yeah, plus 21. So it's only 20.4 extra damage when they're debuffed, whereas this is 20. So I'm getting higher flat attack, and it's not conditional to a debuff. Next up we have Janua. I used him for a little bit. I had him on a couple builds. This is kind of scuffed gear right here. Let me show you my original build. All right, so this isn't exactly my original build, but this is pretty close to it. Basically, you want to like, if you're not a cleaver, you can, and you're like me, you go slower. You could make him slower like this and just like stack as much damage as possible. And he has a crit chance imprint as well, so if you can get that, even better. But if you're a cleaver, yeah, definitely go with like 220, 240 speed, something like that. Of course, the damage is going to be a lot less. It's going to probably look like this right here. But yeah, this is like not good gear that I have on him right now because I started pre-banning him. This is my K-Run. Pretty good stats overall. I am overcapped by 20 crit chance, but is what it is. I have him on Decrescent, so that way he just counters a lot. Not too much else to say. You want to make sure he has immunity and ER preferably. My Knockwall here is only 281 speed. I have a good amount of effectiveness though. Yeah, I think it's really important for Knockwall to have effectiveness, so I did make it so she's a bit slower, but I want to keep landing my debuffs without soul burn, right? Whereas a lot of people tend to go faster with a Knockwall, but they don't have like any effectiveness, and then they're not debuffing anything. Cesaria, not really used, but it was here for Paracleave. I tried Paracleaving for a little bit, didn't really get anywhere, but it's like a decent stat line, I guess. Not too much to say on it. Veronica, I did have her geared for my Paracleave. Pretty good unit overall because of Guiding Light. You can kind of work her into some anti-cleaves, like if you're doing a Zeo trap where you need more Guiding Light rangers. Veronica's kind of good at that because if she takes the turn, she can put a bomb and stun someone and push up your next ally. Pretty good unit overall. Next up, we have Fire Polly. She pretty much resurfaced towards the end of the season. Really, Degen Polly is the best for it because she was used to counter Janua and ML Polly. Reason being, you know, ML Polly has to do her non-attack S3, otherwise she's kind of useless, so this forces Fire Polly to get procced. You have her on Abyssal Crown to possibly stun someone, and then you take the turn, you unbuffable, blind, and then possibly stun them again. Really, really strong, especially if you pair her with Mitt, so that way, like, she just doesn't die in a hit or two. Lethe, she wasn't that good for me this season. I got a few good games with her, but like with Laya coming out, Lethe just got power crept. Like she didn't really perform well at all, especially because you need to land Frostbite on the units, the enemy team. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing any damage if they have Aureus, which really just makes her damage suffer. And she's just overall a lot worse than Dark Corvus or Laya. Next up, we have Karina. My Karina is very scuffed. You can definitely get better than this, but I have her at basically 2.7 defense, 15k HP, 165 speed. Not great. I have 83 effectiveness. It's kind of funny, kind of helps. It's nice when you can debuff like a low ER target and they're not expecting it, especially if they draft like ML Ken or something like that, you defense break him. Pretty valuable. We have Terano Royal Guard. Yes, I unironically did draft him into anti-cleave. He is really, really good into things like C. Pavel or ML Ludwig if your team is bulky enough. Especially if you have him paired with an Aureus unit, that way he lives even longer. But Terano Royal Guard, he reflects 50% of the damage suffered from a critical hit, which means that a lot of the cleave units will just end up like evaporating as they hit him. It's pretty hilarious. I have him on Bastion of Perlucia, gives him immunity for free, and the backline immunity and barrier for free, and a barrier for himself, so it's even like a bigger HP bar. You really just want to stack as much HP as possible on him. We have Elvira. She kind of only shined for like a really small period of time, but yeah, you can just kind of have whatever stats on her. Ideally, you want like 300 ER, but she wasn't a priority unit anymore, so I just kind of threw whatever I had on her. Didn't pick her too much. Peyra, I did have her 310 with 166 effectiveness. I was trying to Peyra cleave for a little bit. Didn't turn out too well, not because the cleave was necessarily bad, but because I kept getting 15%ed repeatedly, like every match, and it just tanked my win rate. Was not great. Ran, I had him geared at 310 for a time before I geared Peyra. I used him for kind of like anti-cleave, but it wasn't really worth it. I got a couple wins off it that were kind of cheeky, but he like, unless you're a pure cleaver, Ran not much purpose in gearing. Lua kind of fell off like midway through the season, kind of like with Laya coming out. I did have her at about 288 speed, if I remember correctly, with like 100 effectiveness. Guiding Light, pretty generic. SSB, yeah, I've had this build on her for a while. It's a decently high gear score, but it looks really bad. You can't really draft her too often, but there are occasionally like very niche times where you can actually pick her and she's either a force ban or can win you the game. Especially helps because her EE dispels a debuff once you AoE. This is my Arya. She became pretty good at the end of the season with Janua coming out. She was a pretty solid counter. This stat line is actually pretty good. I opted for less crit damage and then just went with Victorious Flag, so I'm still getting extra damage, and Victorious Flag is also acting as a like mini Proof of Valor, so I'm taking less damage as well. And then I have 153 ER. It's much easier to get with her new EE. Definitely go with the gains 1 focus at the start of the turn. Ida was part of my Paracleave. Yeah, I don't really know. You couldn't really pick her too much, but it was kind of like I wanted as much damage as I could while being at least 240, 250. Didn't really ever get to use her that much though. We have Fumir. Fumir is extremely good if you can pull off a Fumir cleave. Definitely have her at 200 effectiveness minimum. The ER is optional, but it can really help against, like, you know, if anyone tries to pick like Sage Ball or something like that, they can't sleep her, they can't provoke her, they can't stun her. Really helps out. Probably want her at 220 minimum, but you want to just basically tune her to go after your red unit and your green unit, either order. You can make her any speed really, as long as you got that 200 effectiveness. Depends on what you're drafting and how you're drafting it. This is my Elena, pretty premium gear. She's at 270 speed, 16k HP, little lacking on defense, but I still have 220 ER. Really, really, really solid unit for anti-cleave, and pretty good into Janua as well if you're struggling with that. Also, I think it's underrated how good the ER buff is that she gives on the S3. So not only is it invincibility, but FRES buff as well, which really helps out if your team like could use that extra ER. If I paired her with like Dark Corvus or something like that, or paired with ML Ken, it's just extra ER and like for free. Alencia, yeah, this is just kind of whatever build. I think I drafted her like twice. Once was an accident, the other time was intentional, but she got force banned. Never really got to see how she performs. This is my Elia. I have her 28k HP at 251 speed, 1400 defense, on immunity. The immunity was really helpful for messing with Flitica cleavers, because when you get Flitica cleaved and you have Lia, they try to just S3 Lia right off the bat so they don't have to S2 and proc any of your anti-cleave units. So immunity really helps with getting not reset, and then also just make sure you have a plus 30 artifact on her. Rimuru, mixed feelings on Rimuru. He got me some wins, he got me some losses, but I have him on the ER build, arguably the most cringe build of all for Rimuru. But yeah, 20k HP, 1300 defense, 164 ER, 210 speed. I have him on Strat Gauntlet just because I wanted to get extra ER without using like Bastion of Hope, taking it from anyone. He's kind of good, but I really only picked him into things like Landy and such. It didn't go too well. Not all that time. I have Zahak here. Zahak he's alright. He's a niche pick. You can pretty much only pick him into things like Aiden, or if they go like evasion units and you guarantee first turn. Yeah, I have him on Symbol of Unity because like I'm not really using it on anyone else, but other people could, totally fine. He's too niche of a pick, really. He kind of fell off. We have Shaltir this next season anyways. Shaltir's 100% hit chance for free. Next we have Albedo. I don't know the ideal build for Albedo. This build was a lot of fun for me. 26k HP, 260 crit damage. I have her on her own artifact, 3F, but it's only plus 15. Surprisingly, this does a lot of damage, especially on her S3. Not only are you unbuffing and breaking defense, but if there was a Landy that didn't have like Aureus or something like that, this S3, if I got the crit, would bring Landy to like half HP or lower, like doing 9-10k damage, something like that. Like that's a lot for a night like this. Also just very, very good overall for anti-cleave or just in general mitigation. I paired her with my ML Ken that I'll get to later, but it just let my ML Ken survive so many hard-hitting units, and then he could just come back from it. Very, very good unit. I would definitely recommend pulling her if you haven't already. Green Armin, I couldn't really use her. This is a horrible build. Yeah, that's all to say there. Senya, also kind of a dead unit. Not really many places to pick her. Her best build is on Lifesteal with the Gab, EE, but I can't afford that. Never really found success with her. This is my Christie. Pretty good for Zeo trapping. Didn't really use her much elsewhere though. You would basically just want to stack ER because you're giving half of it to your backline, right? I have her on Bastion of Perlucia. Really helped with the anti-cleave, giving a free barrier and immunity to the backline as well, on top of the ER and Aureus that she gives to the backline. But yeah, that's all to say on her. Yulha, kind of a dead unit. Would not recommend until they buff her. Politica, minus 253 with 100 effectiveness, plus her own artifact, which gives a little more. Kind of hard to use outside of Rand Paracleave. You need a lot of debuffs to make her work, unless you're one of the speed demons that can have her at like 280 speed with the same stats. I can't do that. Celine, honestly a terrible unit this season. She is getting buffed though, so be aware of that. She is about to become extremely strong, but for this season, I had her on some pretty high gear, and she not once ever did her job right, so unfortunate. Sid, never used him, but this is just the build I've had for a while now, kind of downgraded. This is my Gala Lilius. These stats are pretty good, but surprisingly, I would still miss kill at times. So honestly, like if I had her triple S, that would be better. Uh, Kind of hard to draft when there's things like Rimuru around. You gotta watch out for that, and you also kind of need to take first turn because if the enemy has like C Lilius and let's say you have Bunny Dom Gala, C Lilius can S3 proc the Bunny Dom, you get skill null, but your damage limit gets stripped, right? And then Lilius will just dual attack into your Gala and you'll die normally. So kind of hard to draft her, to be honest. Violet, love-hate relationship with him. Pretty solid gear overall. High bulk, but he just keeps getting hit. He just keeps getting hit. 35 with the evasion artifact is just 55 evasion's not enough. It's too hard to guarantee that many wins with him. This is my Destina. I have her on counter set. It's kind of a meme build. I never really picked her that much this season. I picked her more last season. I think she just kind of fell off with Laya existing. Laya just kind of overtook being a cleanser in general. And then Destina's also really susceptible to Hwayoung, so other people found better use than I did with her. Next up we have my Ocean Breeze Luluka, 200, let me put it on self-imprint. 236 ER plus her own artifact is extra 32, so I'm really stacked on ER, but you also want to have effectiveness to strip things. Strip, blind, and silence things like ML Ken, low ER, ROLs really comes in handy. Have her 226 speed. I wish I had more bulk. This bulk is really low. Some people opt for more bulk and less speed, but I kind of liked when mine could cut things, so it's kind of just preference. Rowana, you can have on free gear, any gear at all, really. This worked perfectly fine in Emperor. You don't need anything special for her. You just need HP. HP, immunity is nice, and then her own artifact, Stella Harpa, or not her own artifact, this is Elena's artifact, but Stella Harpa is really good to have on her. This is my Conqueror Lilius, 287 speed, pretty slow as far as they come, especially in Emperor. I have her on Circus Fantasia for extra effectiveness for free. It kind of sucks that they buffed this artifact to have crit chance on it, because now with my crit set C Lilius, she's always critting, which is really bad if there's like an ML Ken, I feel. I don't know, sometimes you can play around with it, but it's not really that great of a build I have here. LQC, she got buffed. She's still a bad unit, honestly. I don't think I ever saw her once in a match where it was like MVP all the way. Occasionally she's a force ban, but that's about it. A Tywin, do not use my A Tywin as a reference. This is just the build I had. It worked pretty well, honestly, but that's because nobody expected it. Also, being this slow kind of hurts him, if anything. I had good damage, but I don't think this build was worth it. It's kind of a meme. But A Tywin really popped off at the end of the season with ML Poly and stuff coming out. This is my Bellion. I opted just to go for as much bulk as possible. Honestly paid off. Pairing this with like Crimson Armin and Anti-Cleave makes it really hard to kill her, and then you can just get as many counters as possible. I went with Elbrus. Other people, they went like Protection Set Aureus or Counter Aureus, other things like that. I prefer her original build for Anti-Cleave though. Next up we have Crimson Armin. This is like the most scuffed Crimson Armin ever. I have 3 pieces that are I-80, and I also have a neck that is flat HP main with attack and speed on it. This is honestly a terrible build, but even this was able to help me secure Emperor. This provided enough mitigation to get me into Emperor with a protection set. Next we have LRK. He honestly kind of fell off through the season, unfortunately, so he's just kind of on bulk, low ER, like normal speed, Aureus. Not too much to say on it. This is my Navy Captain Landy. I'm running the base speed build with a lot of attack and damage, but I also have a good amount of bulk. Honestly, she did help me a lot in the season, even though there are games where I called her a potato because she would just sit there like a potato and do nothing. But she overall did help me a lot. Definitely a good unit to have. Only problem was fighting into things like Biblis. Biblis really made Landy hard to draft. Next up, we have ROL. Didn't draft her a whole lot, but I have her on Bastion of Perlucia to give the backline immunity and barrier. It helps when I draft like 3 light units, including ROL, so they're all getting a barrier already. But let's say my last unit is like ML Ken or something like that. I can put ML Ken in the backline and then he gets a barrier as well. So that way the whole team's just super protected. But yeah, I have her 164 ER. Low effectiveness, but with the free effectiveness buff she gets, that's 88 effectiveness right there. Pretty good. She's on counter. Um, Counter's kind of funny. It can both help you and harm you, especially if they have things like Biblis or Sermia or Rowana. Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend counter set on her. Next up, we have Aiden. She is geared for anti-cleave with a lot of damage. Okay speed, not much bulk though. My main problem with this unit is just her not dodging. Everything else wasn't really an issue. It's just the fact that there's so many games I played where she just doesn't dodge turn 1 and I die. Can't really do anything about that. Evasion units, right? We have my Spirit Eye Celine. Only drafted her a few times. I have her at 255 speed with decent damage on Secret Art. She was just really too hard to draft this season. Last season, I was able to pop off a lot, but with things like Laya, yes, I'm bringing up Laya again. Too many things just counter Celine. She's too hard to use. They even buffed her, but the buff didn't actually do anything at all. It honestly didn't help her damage performance whatsoever. Hopefully they do something with her. I have Architect Leica. She kind of is just like a force ban. Kind of nice to have geared about 270 at minimum. That way, if you can guarantee first turn arguably with your opener, then if you think you can outspeed their opener, like if they have Liar or something and they don't seem like they're a speed demon, you could use this to contest and they might force ban it, or if they don't respect it, you might be able to get a free kill at the start of the match. But not that great of a pick overall. You won't really ever see her, at least not in this past season. Sage Ball, I have 260 speed with low ER, but he's on Bastion of Hope. I would say 260 speed is the minimum you want on him. Honestly, if you could go faster, probably better. But my main problem with him was his S2 would just never sleep people, but they are buffing that. They are buffing that, so next season he will be better. Like, guaranteed will be better. Next up, we have my Solitaria. I have her at roughly 250 speed, 200 effectiveness, and 115 ER on Fairy Tail for a Nightmare. For fixed damage and stripping. Really, really good into things like Janua, ML Shu, Ocean Breeze Luluka, anything with focus. I think 200 effectiveness is the minimum effectiveness you want on her, because this season there was a lot of ER cheesers, and if you can't land your debuffs, this unit is just literally useless. So having at least 200 effectiveness, I think, is the way to go. Next we have Dragon King Sharoon. I think this is a pretty solid build. I have her pretty bulky, about 210 speed. Just like Solitaria, 200 effectiveness minimum. You really want her to strip things, especially if you bring her into Arya or a high ER team that has knights in it, because she can defense break them if they're a knight or soul weaver, especially soul weavers having high ER. If you can defense break them and then guarantee like a follow-up DPS, they're just dead. She can actually turn out to be a pretty good pick. And then also having her as a niche pick to counter like stuns and sleeps does come in handy, even though she can be played around, so she's not a top tier unit, but she is good to have. Next we have Bunny Dom. I have her at 267 speed, 100 ER. Make sure you have immunity on her and Doctor's Bag. Probably the best way to go about it. Some people have her faster, some people have more ER on her. I don't think it's necessary. Just get around 100 ER with immunity, 270-ish speed, you should be fine. Not too much to say on her. Good-ish counter to Sea Lilies and such, Knockwall. Next up we have Dark Corvus. Dark Corvus, really want to stack as much HP, defense, and ER as possible. He can be pretty low speed if you have a Durandal, which I do, so he honestly clutched me a lot of games. If I could pick like Laya, Dark Corvus, and they don't have good enough DPS to break through, they can just straight up win the games. You do want to be careful though if they have, say, like Sea Lilius ROL. If you kill their DPS and they still have Ceolilius Arwell, they can honestly just rope you until you die if they're able to provoke you with Ceolilius. So you do have to be aware of that. Next up, we have Designer Lilibet. Honestly, extremely good unit for anti-cleave. I was really happy that I kept her geared and on Golden Rose to get some healing in when she's below 50% HP. I have her pretty bulky with pretty high damage, about 200 speed. If you could go faster, might be better, but it's kind of hard to get a stat line like this, at least for me. But yeah, pretty good unit, would recommend building and having on hand. Inferno Kawazu, honestly a terrible unit. Occasionally he's a force band, but this unit is, yeah, he's just not good. Even if you can snipe the like 1 DPS, it's either like they have a bad draft and he wins the game, or you inted by picking Inferno Kawazu and you just lost the game because you picked him. Would not recommend. This is my Malona. I have her pretty decent bulk, pretty high damage on Lifesteal Pen, and then Proof of Valor. This way, when I pair with Mitigation, she is extremely tanky, can still do quite a lot of damage, and even survive things that like don't crit you. So like some people go Draco Plate, but that doesn't protect you from Laya. If the Laya doesn't have enough HP and you have like Mitt plus Barrier, Proof of Valor will actually save you from Laya or just other things in general. Proof is just a lot stronger Mitt, even into things like Landy, than Draco is. Next up, we have ML Ken. I think this is honestly the best build for ML Ken, at least for this current meta. I have him low ER, so it's like 50. You can resist some like 0 effectiveness units like Eufine's attack down and such, but just having him absurdly bulky with a lot of HP and defense, and then still really high damage, he's able to just tank everything and do a lot of damage. I always drafted him with 2 cleansers and tried to get Mitt as well. He basically just became unkillable. By the end of the season, he had like a 70% win rate, which is extremely high. But I'll go ahead and show you my right side. I actually have a defense neck with good bulk. Doesn't have to be insanely high equipment score. Attack ring, same thing, good bulk, damage, and then HP boot. So yeah, I'm not even using crit damage right side. You just get all the crit damage from destruction set and then rolls on your gear. But yeah, honestly, really love using this unit. You just have to be careful. Don't draft him into Laya. Don't draft him into like a lot of non-critting things. Can be pretty risky. Hand guy, pretty generic. I never really used him. Not much to say. Urban Shadow Shoe, I have her at 266 speed on Proof of Valor. 21k HP, pretty good overall, 240 crit damage. It's a solid build. I like having her on immunity personally. Helps if you draft her into like ML Ken or something like that. It prevents you from getting provoked right away, or just debuffed right away if they have like, I don't know, any kind of debuffer that only does like 1 strip, and you have like barrier plus immunity. Pretty solid build overall, but I didn't draft her a whole lot. I was usually the one countering her. This is my Briar Witch. This gear is questionable. 250 speed, decent damage, low effectiveness, which is bad. Guiding Light, of course. Honestly, you could go lower speed and have more effectiveness, would probably be a better build. You really want to land her debuffs if you don't have souls. But I didn't pick her that much. Pirate Flan, really good unit to have, like, especially if you're trying to counter Janua, just like with Solitaria. She was a pretty great Janua counter, just because she plants the bombs and then stuns. Kind of hard to pick her, but she's honestly just really fun to play. So want to have good bulk on her, decent attack for damage, and I chose to go with lower effectiveness just because I didn't plan on drafting her anywhere but into like Janua and such. So I thought this was fine. Next we have C Phantom Politis. She took my Payra's 310 gear and is now 297 with decent bulk and 124 effectiveness. I run on Misconfile. It's very RNG, but it really helps win games if you can defense break a unit and then dual attack with like Malona or Landy into a defense broken unit. You just one tap them. Extremely overpowered unit. Don't know why SG released her. Next up, we have Requiem Rowana, which I used with my Payra Cleave. I have her on the funniest build of all time, counter set with good bulk, good attack, and a lot of effectiveness. Just run book on her. Yeah, after her buff, she became pretty good. She strips a buff now and resets still. Not a whole lot to say on her, really. She's kind of a standard pick for the Paracleave, but yeah, she's just pretty straightforward. Spectre Tenebria. I'm honestly not a fan of this build, but it did get me a few wins here and there, being on Lifesteal and Unity with decent stat line, I guess, but I don't know. You could probably just go Destruction set with more damage, more bulk, more speed, and ignore the lifesteal part. We have Zeo. I have him at 260 speed. He needs to be 260 minimum, preferably faster. I have him on hybrid with effectiveness and low damage. I really just wanted to make sure that I could debuff things like ROL and push back low ER units like Karina when I do my Paracleave. We also have Biblis. I have changed her gear quite a lot. She has let me down repeatedly by just not landing her defense break when a unit counters, so I mean, maybe other people will be luckier than I am. This unit just kind of aggravated me by never landing the debuffs I needed, but she is still an overall good unit to have if they have counterattacks. I believe our last unit is Lionheart Sirmia. She's missing an artifact right now. I think I just had her on portrait though. I have her Lifesteal Torrent. Pretty good stat line, honestly. Like, the gear quality is insane. Like, this is 80 gear score, but she just... everything in the current meta destroyed her viability. Either the teams are too bulky for her to hit, or there's things like ML Poly being first picked, which reduce her fighting spirit so she can't get her S3, or Elvira picks, which reduce it completely. Yeah, it's just, she's too hard to use right now. Unless you're a cleaver that can use her as like a niche last pick, there's not much place for her. Actually, this unit as well, I do have Rylet geared. He's just kind of geared on a nuker lifesteal build. He's kind of impossible to pick right now. There's just too many things that stop evasion, especially because he doesn't have innate evasion. He has evasion buff, which means he can get stripped. So kind of hard to use. Very, very, very rarely ever picked him, but he got me a couple wins, so it's all good. All right, I think that'll do it for my unit showcase. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. I hope maybe my builds are some sort of good reference or understanding of what you need or what you can do to get Emperor in this game if you really want to go competitive or even just champion. But yep, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.